So you want to know why your guitar tracks sound bad and you can't just get them to sit right in the mix? It's probably because you need to scoop your mids and you need to stop listening to people on the internet telling you how to mix your guitars. Hi everyone, welcome to Metal Guitar Stuff. Today we're going to just have a chat about mids, the middle frequencies of the guitar tone. I have kind of a confession to make. I have been treating mids wrong the entire time, and I have absolutely been part of the problem. Now, to get this story straight, we have to take a look at the history of my guitar playing and my background. I used to be a young boy playing guitar, started playing around 2005, 2006 or something. And as with anything else that I did, I looked up communities online related to doing whatever. And I ended up on the Ultimate Guitar forums, which was kind of a weird place, probably still is. But I quickly learned that mids are something that you don't mess with. If you just as much as suggested that you scoop your mid-tones on the Ultimate Guitar forum, you would probably be banned. Everyone would hate you. And for some reason there was this enormous sentiment against scooping your mids. And this wasn't just with the Ultimate Guitar forum, this was also on the 7-string forum, and I dare to say probably on most forums related to heavy metal guitar and mixing and playing. Now for some reason people were so hung up on this mixing with your eyes stuff that they were posting how to sound like Metallica, use these settings, put your mids to 6 and your treble to 8 and your bass to 5, as if that had anything to do with the way that your guitars sound, completely disregarding the sound of the pickups and the sound of the speakers, the sound of the amp in general. People were just so hung up in this mid tone, and of course the trebles and the bass as well, but the mids are what we're going to focus on here. People were just so focused on how are you setting your mids, and if anyone just suggested that you scoop the mids, people would be telling you that your guitar was just going to disappear from the mix because the mid-tones are what makes up a guitar in a mix, which isn't entirely untrue, but there's a lot of nuance to this that gets lost in everything here. Now what was so weird was when I started out playing guitar, I did as a lot of other guitarists did and probably are still doing. You put on your distortion and you mess with the EQ settings, and you discover that if you just put the mids to 0, it kind of sounds good, you know? You kind of like that tone because the mids sound weird, they sound like they don't fit in, and if you scoop them, it gets this nice punchy tone, and I like that. But as I was reading people suggesting, commenting, criticizing other people for scooping their mids, I simply just started not trusting myself anymore. And that turned me into some kind of mid-tone monster. Every guitar tone that I was dialing in, I was always cranking up the mids, cutting down the bass, cutting down the treble, because I was so obsessed with these mid-tones that were gonna save the day and make sure that my guitars were always fitting into the mix. And for some reason I don't think I could actually understand how, let's say, Pantera could make professional records with a guitar that was completely devoid of any mids, because their guitar tone on, let's say, Cowboys from Hell is super scooped. But according to the gods on the internet forums, that would be impossible and that would sound like crap. But the whole point here is that people were mixing and setting their EQ settings with their eyes and not with their ears. Now, what happened when I was always, boosting the mids and cutting out everything else? Well, I ended up with some really, what should we call them, honky guitars. The kind of sound that you end up with when you have way too much mids and there's no treble and bass left, and just kind of overpowered the mix. I would struggle with the guitars not having any low end, not having any punch, not having any air, because I was just so obsessed with always low passing and high passing the guitars into oblivion, thinking that of course that's what the pros are telling me, so it must be true. And if I as much as just touched the EQ and started scooping out some mids around 700 to a couple of thousand hertz, I would just feel bad. And that that's kind of weird, isn't it? I would just feel bad scooping out the mids because I was so convinced that it was wrong, and this was going on for 10 years. It was actually just recently I was listening to Ola Englund playing some guitar and his mixes, and he just has so much low end in his guitars. There's so much punch, and there is so much air, there is so much high frequency sizzle, you know, and it just struck me, should I just try and scoop the mids for once? And that kind of became a revelation of sorts, because when I started scooping out the mids, everything started sounding better. And it didn't sound better because I was just scooping out the mids. It sounded better because I was finally doing something that I thought would actually make the guitar sound better, and not something I would think that to make the guitar sound correct or right. I wasn't adjusting settings because of what everyone else was telling me on the internet. I was adjusting the settings to try something to make it actually sound better, and it just sounded amazing. And that's kind of the whole point with this video. Do your own adjustments. Don't listen to what everyone else is telling you, and don't think that you can just kind of make adjustments based on guides telling you to boost 700 hertz by 2.3 decibels, because those kind of guides don't know what you're working with. Your source material might be completely different, which is also why telling you to scoop or boost the mids is completely useless advice, because those guides and those people on the forums, they don't know what you're working with. You might have a guitar signal that is completely devoid of any bass and treble, and what that signal needs is for you to control the mids and tame the mids. But that's where it comes up to you to use your ears and listen to it, because that's what matters. Listening to the signal and deciding for yourself what sounds good and what doesn't sound good. And there was one major issue I had with all these years of mixing guitars, and that was when I was putting lead guitars on top of rhythm guitars. I was running into the issues of the lead guitars just being so honky that it sounded like they were coming out of a 1930s radio, because there was just no treble and bass left. Usually when you're putting lead guitar on rhythm guitar, you have to make the lead guitar kind of thinner, if that makes any sense. Having a lot of bass frequencies in the lead guitar doesn't always make any sense, because you're playing in the higher registers and the bass frequencies will just mud up the sound. But you're running into issues when your rhythm guitar is already just full of mids, and then you're kind of putting this mid-heavy lead guitar on top, and it just sounds like crap. And I was always wondering, why are my lead guitars always sounding so bad? And again, the issue was there was just too much mids. There was too much mids on the rhythm guitars, which required me to put even more mids on the lead guitars to make them sit in the mix, and again just made them horrible and harsh to listen to. So if there's one thing that I want you to take away from this video, it is to start mixing with your ears and not with your eyes, and not with thinking about what everyone else is telling you to do, because your ears are what's going to decide if it sounds good or not. And don't do like me and spend 10 years having issues with your guitar mixes because someone on a forum told you to don't scoop the mids.